Hare Krishna, welcome, and namaste, hello. This is a short talk about Narada Muni, the saint and preacher of Krishna Bhakti. Yeah, I thought we would talk about Narada Muni because why not? We study Bhagavad Gita, of course we do, but Srimad Bhagavatam is our book. And in fact, Bhagavad Gita is sort of everybody's book. If you go to India, everybody knows the Bhagavad Gita. But the Bhagavatam, the Srimad Bhagavatam, also known as the Bhagavat Purana, or the beautiful story of God. Bhagavad Gita is the song of God, and Bhagavatam is the story of God. It is the other book. It is one is the PhD and one is the graduate study. And Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada writes, is the postgraduate study. So Bhagavatam is as important as the Bhagavad Gita, and even more important for zooming in on specifically Krishna and Krishna's activities. You won't get many of Krishna's activities in the Bhagavad Gita. You'll get the essential teachings. But just as Krishna begins to do something, the Bhagavad Gita comes to an end. Or I should say, Bhagavad Gita ends the morning of the first day of the battle. So we know about Krishna's identity, but we don't know of Krishna's activities during his incarnation. So Narada Muni, he wanted this story to be written about Krishna, and he approaches Vyasadeva, his disciple. Now, you will know the story because I've told it many times. But what I want to do now is tell you that Narada Muni makes his presence felt throughout the 12 cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 12 books of the Bhagavad Purana. And we find that he has an important role in intervention. He comes and he intervenes in the life of different kings, different yogis, different saints, and every time he intervenes, he brings them up to a new level of enlightenment, or a new level of understanding, a new perspective, which quite revolutionizes their life. And it's because of this that these activities of Narada Muni and the effect that he has on others are recorded for us from thousands and thousands of years ago, so that we ourselves may learn from his instructions. So in the very first canto of the Bhagavad Purana, we discover that when the Vedas had been written, the Vedas, says the guru of the teacher of the Vedas, the compiler of the Vedas, Vyasadeva, he said that the Vedas mainly focus on how to have a prosperous, healthy, happy life in this world. Nothing wrong with that. But they do not really give transcendence. The Upanishads, which are called the Vedanta, the end of the Vedas, they talk about the difference between body and soul, but still none of them, even though they talk about liberation from bondage of samsara, they don't talk about the origin of all, the Godhead. So Narada Muni speaks to Vyasadeva and he says, the reason why you have not achieved full satisfaction, full tushti, is that you have not compiled this for the benefit of other people. So Vyasadeva goes into deep meditation and he sees Bhagavan, the Supreme Person, the material energy of Bhagavan, and the jivas, the fallen souls. So he writes about that. But he also writes about the appearance and activities of the incarnations of Vishnu. And then he writes about Krishna, the supreme fountainhead of all incarnations. So altogether that makes 350 chapters, 90 chapters of which just talk about Krishna. So when we look at the name of the book, the Bhagavat Purana that he wrote, Bhagavat or Bhagavan, means that person who has everything. And if we want to see what the subject matter of the book is, we look at the most words out of all the 18,000 verses. Most words are spent on Krishna, and therefore Krishna is Bhagavan. And those who are fixed on Krishna, they are known as Bhagavatas. So we are all Bhagavatas. We come here every Monday evening to hear something about Krishna. Therefore we are Bhagavatas. And therefore we read the Bhagavat Purana. So in the second canto, Narada Muni inspires sages and kings with his teachings on devotion. And in the third canto we get to Narada Muni's own personal biography. He says that in his last life, before he became Narada Muni, he was a small boy. His father had died, and his mother had a small hut, small house. And one time, during the rainy season, some wandering sannyasis, devotees of Vishnu, took shelter in that hut, and she served them with food every day. And he served them with food every day, and through this Vaishnava Seva, he was also able to eat some of the remnants of their food. And just by eating the remnants, what they left behind on their plate, he was able to achieve devotion. And then he left home after his mother died. It's a very sad story. His father died, then his mother died. He left home and he travelled. And he describes his travels through pastures and paddy fields, over meadows and moors, through valleys, mountains, and forests, and through rivers even. And then he describes his own death. And then death came like a lightning flash, where thunder and lightning come instantaneously if the lightning is above you. So he said, in that life I died and I became who I am today. So he says, by the grace of eating the remnants, just eating the remnants of these greatly advanced Vaishnavas, I became the preacher that I am today. So that's his story. And from that transformation story, we have the idea that anyone can attain transformation. Because Narada Muni was just a child, just a small boy, but he attained transformation to the level of devotion of Narada Muni simply by one principle, eating the remnants of the Vaishnavas. So if he can do it, anybody can do it. So that's why the Bhagavatam is inspiring for us. In the fourth canto we hear the story of how Narada Muni guided another young boy, also wandering alone in a forest, whose name was Dhruva. Dhruva wanted to inherit the kingdom of his father, the king, but he was the son of the maidservant of the king, and the wife of the king, the queen, said, you will never, ever, over my dead body, attain the kingdom. You are nothing but the son of a maidservant. Get ye hence. So he went home to his mother and he said, is it true, mother, I cannot attain the kingdom? She said, you will attain the kingdom if the Lord himself grants it to you. So he said, where can I find the Lord? She said, well, I heard that sages go to the forest to find Vishnu, Lord Narayan, who can grant you this request. So immediately he ran away from home with his mother, we are told, chasing after him, only a 5-year-old boy. And he was in the forest with the wild animals, and eventually, it is said, he met Narada Muni, their paths crossed. And this is the perfect example of when the disciple wants the Guru appears. So Narada Muni appeared and said to him, you must chant this mantra, this sacred mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. You chant this mantra, and all perfection will be yours. Everything that you need in life will come to you. So Narada Muni, Dhruva, little Dhruva, he chanted this mantra and he performed yogic penance, pujas, and he became very, very powerful. And he went home and he attained that kingdom, eventually attained that kingdom. Although the Harivamsa tells us that when he saw Narayan himself, because Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya will summon. Every time you chant a mantra, it is not just some sound syllables that you're making. The mantra itself summons the presence of the Lord who is described in the mantra. So when you chant Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, you're in the presence of Vasudeva, the Supreme Person. You may not appreciate that, but you are. So eventually Narada Muni saw the Lord in his heart, and then he stopped seeing the Lord in his heart, and he opened his eyes, and there was Vishnu standing there, Prishnigarbha, the expansion known as Prishnigarbha. And he said to him, my Lord, I wanted a material kingdom, but now I've seen you, I want nothing. I want only bhakti to your lotus feet. Please give me that. So he had that. So this is Narada Muni's intervention and re-steering of the purpose of a life. It's a wonderful example in the Bhagavatam how even though one starts out with materialistic motives, like we all do. I mean, how many of us really want pure love for Krishna? There's other things that we want along the way, whether it's peace of mind or whether it's just ordinary happiness, or I want to feel a little bit more spiritual. We start off like that. But somewhere along the way, we experience a little bit of grace from Krishna, and we feel different. These are the things I was looking for, some magic, some mystical experiences. This is so much better. And so now I'm happy. So the next one we come to, in the later part of the 4th canto, and we will zip through these cantos, I'm not stopping on every one, is King Prachinabharhi. And with King Prachinabharhi, he's a little bit different from Dhruva. And Narada Muni, he's the expert because he knows what to say to each person, so he tells Prachinabharhi a story about a city where there's 9 gates. Then he tells them a story of a great king who lived in that city, and a queen and a snake with 5 heads and different soldiers, and the city was attacked. He spins him this tale, and this tale is completely analogous because the city of 9 gates is the body, which has 2 holes for the ears where things can come in and go out, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, that's 6, mouth 7, anus and genital, which is 8 and 9. So there's 9 gates in this city. So the city of 9 gates, the fabulous city of 9 gates, is nothing more than the king's body, and the queen is his intelligence, and the large snake is the life heirs, and like that. So the king gets a bit worried because the end of the story is not good. The end of the story, you see, is that the body becomes invaded by enemy soldiers, which are no more than the black and white soldiers of day and night time, and the city is set on fire, which is cremation. So the king thinks about this and he thinks, well, I should change my ways. And Narada Muni also throws in a little bit about the animals that he kills while he's out hunting. All kings like to hunt, you see. Not a new thing. And so he changes his ways. So this is another illustrative story from the fourth canto. So King Prachinabarhi and Dhruva. So the fifth canto, we don't know. Narada Muni's influence is felt through spiritual dynasties. Number sixth canto is very interesting because Daksha, the Prajapati of the universe, is charged by God with the responsibility of populating the universe, creating different varieties of humans. And so this first generation of boys that he creates are known as the Haryashvas, and he creates another generation called the Savalashvas. And Narada Muni, it seems contrary to the instructions of Vishnu, who has asked Prajapati Daksha to populate the universe. This is Vishnu's arrangement. But Narada Muni sometimes seems to act contrary to the will of Vishnu for a higher purpose. And Vishnu is always served. So then he tells his boys, he said, well, actually, you've been charged with the responsibility of populating the universe, having a family, but really this is just entanglement in material life. You should really become detached and take to the upward path, the path of devotion, detachment, liberation. So they listen to him very faithfully and they follow him and become brahmacharis. And then Narada Muni is then cursed by Daksha. And in one of the purports, Prabhupada writes, he says, similarly, I have been cursed by the parents of my brahmachari disciples. I've been cursed that I shall never find a place to rest, that I shall always be traveling, always be preaching like Narada Muni. Well, that's funny. In the seventh canto, we find Narada Muni again looking after a young child, that is Prahlad Maharaj, Prince Prahlad as he is at this time. And of course he's not outside the womb, he's inside the womb of Kayadu, his mother, who is wife of Hiranyakashipu. We all know the story of Hiranyakashipu. He was doing great meditation and was given boons by Brahma, but while he was doing meditation for a long time, his wife Kayadu had to take shelter because the demigods wanted to abduct her, and then when she gave birth to Prahlad, they wanted to kill Prahlad because they thought that this boy will be even worse than his father, so she took shelter of the ashram of Narada Muni. And of course in an ashram we have always the reverberation of songs and prayers and hymns, people meditating, chanting, verses being read, Katha, Harikatha. And so Narada Muni was speaking the entire story of Vishnu and his incarnations to Prahlad while Prahlad was in the womb. And it is said, Satam Prasangam Mamavirya Samvido, that the association of pure devotees where the Katha of Vishnu is being spoken, this takes us onto the path of liberation and makes us perfect, just hearing stories about Krishna. So Prahlad became perfect while in the womb, and of course the rest you know, because he was perfected being, he was protected in all ways, even against the great evil of his father. At the end of the seventh canto, we find Narada Muni talking to a king. He talks to King Yudhishthira, and Yudhishthira is the elder brother of the 5 Pandavas, married all married to Draupadi. And of course, their story is that they lost the kingdom due to a gambling match, and they retrieved the kingdom after the battle of Kurukshetra had been won. So here's where the Pandavas story, the Yudhishthira story from the Bhagavad Gita, becomes entwined with the story within the Bhagavatam. So Yudhishthira is asking questions. How can I be a king? And it was the custom in those days for kings to be advised by saints, and therefore Narada Muni teaches him the business of a king, how to be a king. And so these instructions to Yudhishthira are very good instructions on how the different divisions of society, kings and laborers and warriors and merchants, can all function successfully in society. It's a very good section. In the 8th canto, Narada Muni is mentioned in the story of Gajendra, the story of the elephant king who was bathing in the water, attacked by a crocodile, and it was delivered by the agency of Lord Vishnu arriving in time. Narada Muni is mentioned in there. And in the 9th canto, he corrects kings, because generally people who are in contact with the material affairs of this world, they need correction by those who are completely free from the affairs of this world. That's a good relationship. If the saints become involved in politics, that's not good. If the kings give up their kingly business prematurely, that's no good. So they must all follow their own dharma, and then it helps. In the 10th canto, Narada Muni he does something very unusual, because we see how he protected Prahlad in the womb. We see how he protected young Prince Dhruva. We see how he narrates his own biographical story of being a child, unprotected. And so here he does something very uncustomary. You would think that he would be a protector of children. But when King Kamsa is given the prophecy by an invisible voice that the 8th child of Devaki, your sister, will ultimately kill you, Kamsa wants to kill Devaki so that she will have no children. Vasudeva, her husband, this is on their wedding day. Vasudeva says, no, why should you kill her? We will bring the 8th child to you. That's presuming they're going to have 8 children. I guess he didn't doubt that they were going to have many children. He said, we will bring that child to you. Besides, it's the 8th child. If we don't have an 8th child, then you've got nothing to worry about. But if you do have an 8th child, then we shall bring that child to you, and we will happily allow you to kill the child. He's in a very dangerous situation, so he's saying anything at that moment to get Kamsa to take the sword away from his wife's neck. So then Kamsa does this, and the first child is born. They're in the dungeon, they're imprisoned by Kamsa. First child is born, and they take it, or rather, no. Narada Muni goes to Kamsa first, that's it. Narada Muni goes to Kamsa and says, well, you don't really know that it's the 8th child. It could be any child. In fact, that prophecy, that invisible voice that you heard, could have come from one of the gods. And the gods, are on the side of Vishnu. If Vishnu is going to come, it could be any of these children. So have all the children come. And of course, the first child is brought, and Kamsa kills all these children. And eventually Krishna is the 8th child, and Vasudeva manages to take him away. But this is very strange that Narada Muni should encourage all these children to be, encourage Kamsa to kill all these children indirectly. And it's explained that these 6 children were also prophesied that they would come to this world very soon, and they would be killed very soon, and they would return to the heavens where they came from. But the 7th child was Baladev, and then the 8th child was Krishna. So, thing is, Narada Muni behaves in ways that we might find surprising, but it's always to enhance, in this case, the appearance of Krishna. So that's the 10th canto. So there's the 11th and 12th canto. He doesn't make much of an appearance there, but what we learn from Narada throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam is that Narada is a preacher, and in the different engagements with kings and children, we see that he has a different approach to each person, because each person needs to hear something different. Now, normally we would do that by talking with a person and usually listening to a person. I say that it takes hours of listening to a person before you can fully understand them, so I like to echo the statement of St. Francis of Assisi, that you should preach constantly, and sometimes you can even use words, because sometimes if you stop talking and just listen, that is the best preaching. When a person feels understood, when they reveal their mind to you and their problems and their doubts and what they want out of life, you can understand that, and that will give you something to say. How can you speak unless you know what they want to listen to? So in this way, the message of Krishna is delivered differently to different people. Narada Muni actually says that if you're dealing with a king, the first question you should always ask a king is, how are your citizens? Have you subdued your enemies? How is your treasury? Like that. If you're dealing with a merchant, you should say, how's business? If you're dealing with a Kshatriya, how are your well, that's a king, isn't it? How are the people under your protection? How are you establishing morality and dharma in your place of responsibility? If you're dealing with a Brahmin, you ask none of these things. Narada Muni says that the question you ask a Brahmin when you meet him is, how is your struggle over the cycle of birth and death? That's the most important thing for a Brahmin. He may live in poverty, but he's very interested in the cycle, escaping from the cycle of birth and death. So Narada Muni has these different approaches to different people. So in the case of all of them, he intervenes. He's not asked to come. Kamsa didn't ask him to come. Yudhishthira might have asked him. Dhruva indirectly asked him. Prahlad didn't ask him. So he intervenes. And of course the famous story in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which repeats the story found in other Puranas, is that Narada Muni came upon the half-killed animals of a hunter. He intervened in the... He left his own path in order to preach to the hunter, and he helped the hunter from the stage that he was at to the next stage. In fact, he even said, well, you're half killing animals, that's very good, but you should fully kill animals. Which again is difficult for us to hear because, of course, killing animals is wrong, and why would Narada Muni, a preacher, say these things? Well, he says it because it was better than what the hunter was doing. Hunter was half killing forest animals and leaving them in agony. So Narada Muni said, well, the best thing for you to do is to kill them completely and spare them the pain. But we say that Narada Muni speaks to the needs, the interests, the concerns, and the expectations of everyone that he speaks to. And his advice is often counterintuitive. Sometimes a preacher does things which are to external appearances strange or unpredictable, but he does it because it will achieve the right result in the end. So that is a small expression of my interest in Narada Muni, and I hope you like that. Prabhupada said that Narada Muni will often come to see his fellow preachers in the Krishna consciousness movement. He said, you may not recognize him, but sometimes he comes to the street or to watch the Harinam Kirtan party. He said, if you look carefully, you will see that he is radiant, but he may be there in disguise. And he laughs to see the residents of Kali Yuga enjoying the chanting of Hare Krishna. Just before I came on, I was watching one video there's two videos. One was the video, there's a big basketball tournament in America. But I wasn't watching the tournament, but the fans in the street were chanting along with the devotees on the Harinam. And there was the video said that they showed some nuns supporting the other team, and the fans of the New York team who won said, they have the nuns, we have the Hare Krishnas here in New York. So that was one thing. I'm sure if Narada Muni was watching, he would laugh at that. And another video I saw was people enjoying in London, the Harinam in London. If you've never experienced that, please do try to get that. But watch out for Narada Muni, wherever you are. He has the ability to appear and watch your Harinam activities, which is a nice thought, isn't it? Which is a nice thought. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says Narada Muni comes to watch the arti being offered to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All right, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Well, we have done very well tonight. I'd like to welcome some viewers who don't come regularly, whoever you are. You've bumped us up to 32 this week. Rajendra Nandan, Hare Krishna. Jayananda, you're a regular. You do count, but you're no stranger. Narayan Das, Hare Krishna, very nice to see you. Jai Chaitanya. Thank you for it. And very good. Let's go back, see if we've got some comments or questions. So I think that Judy, let me do this. Thank you for coming, and good night. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna. That's for my video trimming. We've got Paul from Western Supermare. We've got Elaine. Judy, if you ever have some pictures of the Rath Yatra in Liverpool, do please share them. It's a wonderful thing. Photos to come, she says. Katerina, I couldn't care less about football. Pete, no idea. Linda Romano, we'll be seeing you at the weekend, Linda. I'm coming up to Cambridge. This weekend just gone. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I was in King's Lynn. We had a retreat with 80 devotees on a retreat at a sort of a circle of wooden lodges about 4 miles south of King's Lynn. And they were all either leaders of small groups or from London, so don't get jealous, and or mentors, which means another type of refined leadership post or role. Let's see who else we have. So Jeremy, you must get a platinum star for coming here so often. Jeremy's been with us for many, many years. Elaine says, Elaine is over in Rotterdam. Very nice. If you don't know where Rotterdam is, please look it up. She says, today Krishna sent me someone to the library who was looking for a book about the ancient wisdom of mankind. I couldn't believe it. I told them to get the Bhagavad Gita at the temple in Rotterdam. I didn't have the Gita then and there. Wonderful. Fantastic. Richard Gilbert, Rubanuga. Yeah, Daily Trump News. Jane, nice to see you from the Smur of the Highlands. Now, Paul says we were blessed at the weekend to have a visit from our own Narada Muni in the southwest. Rancho Prime. Kirtan was wonderful. And Rancho opened his sessions on the Srimad Bhagavatam. Wonderful. You were blessed, Paul. What can I say? Katerina says, what was Kayadu's character and how come she was allowed to take shelter of Narada Muni? It's interesting, isn't it? Well, if she was... sometimes in our passionate rush to create paintings that will illustrate these events, to populate the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which are published by the Hare Krishna movement, we sometimes don't check all the details. So in a painting of Kayadu in the ashram of Narada Muni, you'll often see Narada Muni and Kayadu and no one else. But Kayadu would have come there being a very powerful king's wife. She would have come there with a whole retinue, which will have included many elder statesmen and advisors. And that was how she was allowed to take shelter of Narada Muni. Her husband didn't know, of course. He was off in the Mandara mountain, making flames come from his hair with his austerities. Narendra, Hare Krishna. Don't know where you're coming in from, but you're very welcome. Giridhari's with us from Mauritius, so that's fantastic. We don't often get someone actually living on a tropical island on a Monday night, but I'm very delighted. Brajendra Nandan, where are you? Jane says, I love watching Arti. So Jane, you're in the spirit of Narada Muni. Savitri's here. Thank you to you. Pete says, do the 64 Samadhis area in Vrindavan correspond with the 64 Mahants of Lord Nityananda? Unfortunately, no. I don't know exactly all the 64, although I do have a book which lists. He's talking about an area in Vrindavan off to the side of the Radha Damodar temple where there's 64 graves, you could say, of the ashes or the bodies of different great devotees. and these don't actually correspond to the 64 of Nityananda Prabhu, but good question. Alex says, I like the preaching method of Narada's acronym. Nice. Yeah, that was sort of... I don't know if Narada Muni used it, but it's a good one. It's a modern one. Nice. What are their needs? Before you open your mouth to speak to a person about Krishna, ask yourself this question: what do they need? And if you don't know, let them tell you. Ask them a question. What are they interested in? You may want to speak to them about whatever, but if they're not interested, there may be no connection. What are their concerns? What are they a bit doubtful of? What are they worried of? What are their expectations? Are they expecting a long answer? If not, don't give them a long one. If we need to listen to people to get to know their needs, interests, how long we listen before we can preach in that little time we got with them? How do you learn that? Well, what I normally do is one style of preaching is if you have a room full of people, you speak sort of to the common denominator of that group of people. Means that you look around the room and you think, what's the best that I could give most people here? And when you're speaking to a smaller group, you ask some questions and not listen for too long. But when you're listening to one person, and why would you be listening to that one person? Because they have shown interest. So the more people show interest, the more time you can invest in listening to that person. We cannot listen to everybody's stories. There's just not enough time to do that. We're in the business of selecting our audiences. Ultimately. Mark says, as I get older, I realize it's incredible that Srila Prabhupada did travel so much as well as translating, opening temples. It certainly is a dupe human achievement, to say the least. Yeah, at the time, for instance, when I saw Prabhupada in 1977, he came to the manor for the last time. It was, I didn't really see him as a sick old man. I saw him as Prabhupada. Of course, at that time, he only had a few months to live, and he was in pain. But because I saw him as Prabhupada, I saw him as someone who was indefeatable, indestructible, eternal. He was Krishna's man. He was blessed by Krishna to do what he did. And therefore, he would have no problems at all. Which was, unfortunately, it was a projection in my young mind. How old was I in 1977? I was 21. So I was 21, and I was projecting onto Prabhupada the understanding that I had that a pure devotee of Krishna could never suffer pain or discomfort, and that he would always be protected by the Lord until he finished translating the Srimad Bhagavatam. As it happens, he translated 9 cantos up until the 10th canto, which he translated back in 1970. When he had another heart attack in 1970, he didn't know whether he would live that long. And so he translated the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam to give us the stories of Krishna, along with his purports, and he put them together in something called the 2-volume set called Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or the Krishna book, as we called it. And so together with the Krishna book, the 9 cantos, we have everything up. So the 11th and 12th canto. 11th canto is mainly Krishna speaking to Uddhava. 12th canto is sort of a rounding up of the entire book, and telling us how the king, whose story is being told throughout the Bhagavatam, or at the beginning and the end of the Bhagavatam, the king is one particular king, Parikshit, has been cursed to die within 7 days. So the book begins describing how he began hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, and the end of the Bhagavatam, 18,000 verses later, is explaining how he died while listening to the Bhagavatam. Pete is on a rant. Pete says AD and BC, meaning how he did years. Used to refer to Lord Jesus. It seems a demonic thing to change them to BCE and CE. Future generations will soon never get to hear of anything religious. They're already banned singing hymns in school, yeah. While we have our very nice and comfortable Monday evenings here, you should understand there's a war on. It's a war of ideas, and everything that we hold, you and I hold personally dear, is under attack. The whole idea of God, religion, Dharma, foundational values of humanity, it's all under attack. It's gradually being eroded. Therefore, the good people of the world, which means you, must speak up. We cannot go silently into that night of Krishna forgetfulness, or forgetfulness of God. Somehow, for all its faults, America seems to still cling on to even the idea of religion, whereas in this country, even the idea is threatened, isn't it? Children these days going through school will know nothing of, although they're not Vaishnav stories, they'll know nothing of Noah's Ark, or the coat of many colours, or 5,000, Jesus feeding the 5,000, or all of these stories that we grew up on. That's a shame, because whether you believe those stories or whether you don't, they indicate the spiritual supremacy of someone who is in touch with God, or was God's son, representative, who could do miracles because of the power of God. Take away that story, and there's very little in schools to remind or even instruct or even engage children in just the idea of religion, the idea of God. In fact, you'll find it's very fashionable for newly trained and qualified teachers to be very suspicious and wary of religion itself. Although on the surface of it we do pay respect to the idea of particular communities in our country having a religion, and they must not be offended or delegitimized in any way. But that's a political device, it's not an educational device. So everything that you can do, all of you that are here tonight, to restore God consciousness, whether we call it Krishna consciousness or not, it's important, and that's why Prabhupada came. He came to a godless Europe, but he came to a godless America, or he came to, as he said, "I've come to teach you what you've forgotten, love of God." So we have to play our part. This Friday, Saturday and Sunday was an opportunity for us to meet together, the leaders of the different groups that are trying to do that. Each group is made up of 8 to 15 people. So we had 80 leaders. If you multiply that by 8 to 15, you'll have the number of devotees we have in the London area. Now, beyond London, we should also have a retreat for you all. You can all come, the leaders of small groups. If you don't have a small group, you will be surprised, I think, that if you reach out just a little bit beyond your, I won't say comfort zone, because I don't want to insinuate that you're living a life of comfort and not wishing to, make light of the fact that you're living somewhere where it may not be easy to spread Krishna consciousness or share it with one or two other people. But if you do, you'll notice very quickly that even though in the schools, even though in the factories, even though in politics, we have kicked God out, people are still looking for God. They still want something to remind them. That's a wonderful thing, that they can meet you and they will discover it. I was speaking with one man, and he told me that he and his wife just set up a wallpaper table in Billericay in Essex. Now, if you've ever been to a town which is not interested in esoteric traditions of the Far East, including Bhakti, it will be a place known as Billericay. There ain't no such thing as Billericay Bhakti. Essex is not famous for people wanting to become devotees of the Lord, except when they do. And even though he has one small table and a few books and a stick of incense burning and maybe a couple of sweets to give away, people come up and they start talking. It's an amazing thing. And they want to know more. So Richard says, I wonder if things are a little different up here in the Highlands still. Schools still do have some lessons on religion. Tend to look more at world religions. One secondary school, he says, has invited us, and school starts again to tell the class about Krishna. I'm hoping this will lead to more opportunities. It's a small network up here. Yeah, wonderful. That's great. Why not? Elaine says, well, it's good news. The more people will not be allowed worship of God, the more they will be looking for him. So maybe there's hope. Yes, there's always hope. There's always wonderful hope. And I humbly request you, if you can, to be the answer of hope to people. Because it's an amazing thing. This Krishna consciousness movement is based on one man's hope for mankind. And as Mark was saying, although everything was against him, his age, his lack of funding, the fact that he didn't know anybody, the fact that how he was dressed was strange, the message was weird, the rules that he asked people to follow were almost impossible. Chant Hare Krishna, well, that's nice, but how many rounds on beads? Somehow or another, it happened, and a worldwide spiritual revolution was created by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And so, I think that if he can do it, we can do a little bit for him. I mean, I was telling people just yesterday that my life has just been made up of trying to act on Srila Prabhupada's behalf. I don't do this, anything that I do, including this Monday night or any talks I give, it's not for me. I don't do it for me. I certainly don't get rich and I don't get famous, but it's all for my spiritual master who can no longer do it physically. So while I'm alive, I am the hands and the feet that he no longer has on this earth. So that's why we do it. And as long as we do it, Krishna will be grateful. Krishna reciprocates, you see. This is the thing. Krishna reciprocates. And just like Narada Muni, will allow us to cross the path of a person who's very interested. So we may not be able to find them. That's okay. Krishna will allow them to find us, provided we put ourselves in a place where they can find us. They won't come knocking on your door, but they will find you. You have a little table, or you sing, or you stand, or you preach, or put up a poster, invite people to a reading in a library, whatever it is that you do, they will come. Preach it, and they will come. All right, thank you very much for being here. We've reached the hour of destiny. I won't tax you anymore. Please remember these words, and I shall close with lots of blessings that you'll find someone to speak to about Krishna. And like Narada Muni, you will be blessed to find the person that just needs to speak to you right now. They're there. They're waiting for you to